Hi everybody, welcome back to Civil War Monitors Behind the Lines. I'm your host David Thompson. Today, again, it's my privilege to be joined by Dr. Peter Carmichael, who is the Robert C. Fuller Professor of Civil War Studies, as well as the Director of the Civil War Institute at Gettysburg College. So Pete, thanks so much for coming on today.
Good to see you, David.
And it's another year, 2015, which obviously means we've got another institute coming up. 2015 Institute, the Civil War in 1865. This coming June. So if you want to, for our viewers, obviously you just shared the good news with me off camera that it's sold out, which is fantastic. But just to give our viewers the sense of what it's about, why don't you give us a little bit of a brief overview of this year's theme and some of the speakers?
So you're right, yes, it's another year, another CWI conference, and we are in sync with the 150th, so we are doing 1865. It's true, we are sold out for the 4-day conference, which is the talks and the tours. The tours will take place in Richmond and Petersburg, but we do have openings for the weekend only, and the weekend only are all the lectures that include Gary Gallagher, James McPherson, John Wall, and we can talk about the lineup some. For those who don't know the conference, who have not attended, it is quite an extravaganza production that I think enables the attendees to engage Civil War history at a number of different levels, whether it's the topic that covers the military, social, cultural, political sides of the war. We try to do it all, but we also try to do it in a range of formats so that people can have small classroom interactions. We have something called dine-ins. People sign up. They are at a table with 8 to 10 other individuals with one of the historians. They have dinner. They talk about a document or some particular topic. So it's very informal learning experience. We also do small classroom activities as well. We do field experiences, which I've mentioned, which we can maybe talk about a little bit later. But there's really nothing quite like the Civil War Institute in terms of its reach. We hit all ranges in terms of age level. We have, of course, the older group, which I am now a part of. And we also have a lot of younger folks, graduate students, college-age students. And we also have a nice cohort of high school students. We have a high school student scholarship program, which we are very proud of. We have high school students who apply from across the country, and we have a number of alums of that program who have gone on and have done great things. You, of course, are one of them. There are many others. Jason Phillips, who teaches at West Virginia University. Leslie Gordon. I could give you a long list. I won't do that. The point being is that we have an experience for high school students that is geared towards them. They certainly participate in many of the lectures that are open to the audience at large. But we also do some things that are very specialized because, of course, they have their own learning needs and interests. So Civil War Institute, it is something that in my now 5 years has become something quite different than when I started, and I'm very, very pleased and very proud of what it's become. And it's become something because of the attendees who are interested in engaging Civil War history, not just in the traditional military boots on the ground kind of narrative. That I think that they're often stereotyped, and not just CWI attendees. I think Civil War enthusiasts at large, they're often dismissed as only caring about the battlefield and nothing else. I think our institute demonstrates what the field of academic history has revealed, and that is, to do Civil War history, you have to do what? You've got to connect all those dots. If you're going to look at the military side, you can't do that in isolation. You do that by looking at the social and the cultural and the political context. So I think the content of our conference does it. I think the attendees like it a great deal, and I think that they become their own historians when they're here.
And I think it's worth mentioning, Pete, that the high school scholarship deadline, I believe, is March 15th, right?
So it's coming up. That's
yeah,
right.
So but it's still open. So
still open. Yes, thank you for emphasizing that. So please apply if you know of somebody who even has just sort of a general interest in the war. They should consider it. I mean, this is especially for the high school students. We're not looking for people who are specialists or that their great love or passion in life is just Civil War. I suspect when you were a kid, I know when I was a kid, I didn't really care much about anything else except Civil War and basketball. And I was fairly narrow. But you don't have to be so narrow. You can have sort of a passing interest in Civil War history, but you want to know more about Gettysburg and you want to know more about the field of history, because we do a lot with now our high school students to expose them to all the things our profession offers in terms of career opportunities. Most people say, hey, I can only teach with a history degree. It's not the case at all. There are all kinds of things that people can do, and we really give our young people an opportunity to become aware of those professional avenues.
And I think one of those professional avenues, obviously, is becoming a public historian. And to that end, you guys do great work trying to bring in a few public historians on scholarship as well.
We do,
and as well as having quite a few attend where possible.
That's right. So, and again, this makes for a very, I think, a dynamic atmosphere because these public historians, they bring their own perspective and their own work experiences with them. They share with the students and they share with our regular attendees. And the scholarships, they're named in honor of Scott Hartwig, the longtime chief historian here at Gettysburg, who is just, I think, did a miraculous work here as the Gettysburg National Park took on its new visitor center. He was right at the forefront of all of that. The legacy he left here is something that I know I want my students here at Gettysburg College to emulate, and to be able to honor him by giving scholarships to public historians. It's very important to us. And again, it brings a new dimension and a new dynamic to the audience.
Now, as you mentioned, this year there's a slight wrinkle. You're well and truly going on the road this year. There's always been bus trips away from Gettysburg during the week, battlefields in Virginia and Maryland, even other regions of Pennsylvania. But this year there's an overnight involved for those that are taking part in the 4 days.
Yeah, Sunday and Monday night. We leave Sunday afternoon for Petersburg. We will be spending the night there, and then we do 2 days of touring. Monday, people will be taking tours to Appomattox as well as doing the Siege of Petersburg. They have options here, of course. We have another day of tours that will take folks into Richmond. Mike Gorman, National Park Service historian, who was, I think, played an important part in the Spielberg-Lincoln movie. He is going to do a walking tour of Abraham Lincoln in Richmond. We're also going to look at the Richmond defenses of Fort Harrison and Fort Gilmer, which a lot of folks have not seen before. But your point is well taken. We are going to be going on the road, and really the headquarters for CWI on the road is Pamplin Park, which is just a fantastic historical site. It's the site of the April 2nd breakthrough, April 2nd of 1865, of course. A. Wilson Green is the director of Pamplin Park. He will be leading some of the tours. Our group will be having dinner there. They'll be also seeing the Museum of the Common Soldier at Pamplin Park. It is just one of, I think, the most important and most impressive Civil War sites that we have that's not part of the National Park Service. So we're really excited about it. There's some trepidation, of course, when you have adults, and I will say, and of course charge me with ageism here, if adults over the age of 50 and trying to corral them when we get out into the field is going to be an interesting experience. And unfortunately, David, you're going to miss it this year. David, you've always made the CWI. We're going to overlook the fact that you're missing this year. But the year after, 2016, we almost have our lineup in place. It's going to be about the legacy of the war, focusing on Reconstruction and emancipation. And we have what I think is going to be a very engaging conference for the attendees, because we're going to spend the first half of the conference in small classrooms in which the attendees will get an opportunity to work in a really sort of intimate educational setting with our faculty members. So that's what we're doing down the road. I mean, this year I'm very excited as well, and I'm curious about your thoughts. James McPherson is opening the conference, and he's not going to be giving a lecture. I'm going to be interviewing him, or I should say a conversation, just as you're doing right now. And in the blog world, there's been, I think, a fair amount of debate, conversation about military history and its place within the field. And I certainly want to ask Dr. McPherson about his thoughts about where the field is now from when it started, at least for him, in the 1960s. So I'm curious, if you were in my position, what are the kinds of things you'd ask Dr. McPherson?
Oh, wow, Pete. Putting me on the spot for this, and I have to keep in mind this is going up online. Well, obviously, as you mentioned, there's been a bit of a buzz in the academic world that's really carried over, I think, to those that are interested at large about the war, in terms of a couple of pieces, one by Earl Hess in Civil War History, and obviously one by Gary Gallagher and Katie Meyer in Civil War Era, dealing with military history and the war. And then you have Dr. McPherson's separate piece where he identified some historians that he likes to emulate, those that he appreciates in some of their recent work, albeit not that recent stuff that's come out. So I guess if you could really press him, I'd be curious to hear some truly recent work that he has found to be groundbreaking and indicative of where the field might be going at large. Because he's a well-read man, obviously. He's still very active. His Jeff Davis book just came out, I think.
That's
right?
right.
If not, very soon.
True.
Yeah, so I mean, he's still very active.
Yeah, did a book on naval history as well.
Right. So I'd be curious to hear some of the names that are perhaps a little less senior that he sees are reflective of some of the work and trends where the field is going in the future.
Well, do you consider him one of the military historians who seems to be disconnected from where the field is headed in terms of cultural history? I'm curious about what your thoughts are and nature of that debate, right? I mean, there's this sort of sense that military historians are coming unhinged because the field is leaving them behind and not recognizing their work. I'm curious about your thoughts, and my sense is that Dr. McPherson's being lumped in that group of military historians.
You know, I think he might be lumped in there. I don't know if that's unfairly or not, because I don't think that was his intention when he did the piece that he did. I think it really was about the art of history, the art of historical writing, and I think it migrated into further discussions about military history, and I think others have just assumed that he is more senior in age, so as such, he is being connected with those who are more reticent. I don't know if you want to say reticent to embrace kind of not the new military history, which is always a very dicey phrase, I guess you could say, because
it's not so new anymore, right?
It's not so new, and I get confused at times when I see a piece by Dr. Gallagher and Dr. Meyer trying to outline the field of military history, and I think there were 3 fantastic articles that accompanied that issue of the Journal of the Civil War Era that reflect the directions that we can go in. And I felt like there was a little bit of a disconnect between what they were saying and the content of that actual issue.
Yeah, I would agree. What they said, I understood some of their concerns, but the article certainly reflected, I think, where the field actually has been, even though all those 3 articles made, I think, unique and important contributions. But the methodology behind those articles is the methodology that has really reigned over our field for some time. And so I didn't quite understand their critique, but at the same time, I didn't understand all the people who said that military historians were up in arms. And I ask anyone who makes that claim, name a military historian, at least within the academy, in that sort of traditional sense. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to do it. I can't name a single one. I mean, you can testify to this. Steve Berry, your advisor, he's a fantastic scholar. He certainly has a cultural angle. Would you say that he doesn't work in military history? Of course not.
No.
He does. Right?
Yeah.
Does he work in social history? Yeah, of course he does. To some degree, yeah.
Right.
He's interested in the lived experience of those people. Is he interested in politics? Yeah, he is. Is he interested in gender? He is. Well, I don't quite understand what the fuss is here, and I'll be perfectly honest. I think people need to, especially before they write on a blog and they get sort of outraged and they feel as if they're being estranged or somehow they're being pushed to the periphery of their field. And I mean this I mean quite serious about this. This is an issue of self-esteem. It might be a good idea to go see a therapist first before you write on a blog. Like, make sure you work out those issues and don't use a blog and social media as a way to sort of claim that you're being pushed to the outside by these old guard military historians without ever naming names. Because I think in the end, Steve Berry is a good example of it. The scholarship that he does, I don't think that you can't characterize it, you can't classify it in such a narrow way. I don't think we're doing the field any good at all by these debates that are really debates about nothing. What we should be doing is celebrating how integrated our field's become. And let's look at the Monitor. The Monitor is a perfect example of the integration of all of these, I don't want to call them disciplines, but they certainly are areas of interest. Does the Monitor deal with issues of gender? Of course. Military history? Of course. Cultural history? Yes. So, I think we should just all sort of take a deep breath and get into the big tent of 19th century U.S. history and be happy about the fact that we have built upon the work of others. Without the Bell Wileys, and we can go on and on, right? Mm-hmm. Bell Wiley, who wrote that two important books on Civil War soldiers, and there's other people that we should mention as well. We should acknowledge and celebrate that, and that was the thing that was so strange about Dr. Gallagher's piece and Dr. Meyer's piece, is their concern. I guess I sort of get it, but they should actually be acknowledging that the field has really built upon their achievements, and that brings me back to McPherson. Battle Cry Freedom is, in many ways, a wonderfully integrated history of the Civil War that doesn't diminish the politics or the military. I mean, it doesn't certainly have a strong cultural angle, but I think that Dr. McPherson, Dr. Gallagher, Joe Glattar, Catherine Clinton, and the list goes on. And all these people, we've been so influenced by their scholarship. Let's not talk about people who are gatekeepers. Let's just focus on the fact that we have opened up really, I think, vibrant lines of communication.
Well, then that leads me to a follow-up question, if you don't mind, Pete. I'm just curious where you view blogs then fitting into all of this.
Yeah, I go back and forth. I sort of feel like I made the mistake in responding to one blog about I had not read Earl Hess's piece. I have a lot of respect for Earl Hess. Liberty, Virtue, and Progress, one of his first books, if not his first, on Union soldiers, in many ways foreshadows what Dr. McPherson did for what they fought for. I think I have a respect for Megan Kate Nelson, for Brooke Simpson, for Kevin, who does Kevin's Civil War Memory blog, and there are many others. And of course, if I overlook one here, someone will be offended. I just get very frustrated when I see responses that are not especially thoughtful, and that the defense is that, well, we are opening up history to the people, and those who question this or critique it, they're the old guard, they're the gatekeepers, they don't want to democratize history. And I just, I sort of take almost offense at that. I think there should be standards. I love the fact that there's open lines of communication. Getting access to Megan Kate Nelson, to Brooke Simpson, to Kevin, and to many others, if you're just out in the mainstream audience, that's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. But so much of the discussions that follow, I don't know, they just, again, they seem to be a lot of people who are so concerned about their standing in the field, and it doesn't lead to a very enriching, I think, conversation. I don't know, how do you feel about blogs?
Well, so my take then is what you're getting at is a little bit, there's a distinction here between content of what's being posted versus the comment section that would follow it.
Well, I think that's a very good point. Yes, I'm glad you said that, because of course I can read Kevin and Megan and Brooks and feel very good about it. So let's take Brooks has just gotten into some kind of dispute with John Stauffer about Black Confederates. I just sort of glanced at it and immediately sort of regretted that I wasted my time on it, in part because Brooks offered this very smart, thoughtful critique of Stauffer's perspective. Now, I didn't look at Stauffer's point, so I don't know. I sort of got a sense for the battle lines, but I can say this about Brooks's analysis. It's well-reasoned, it's specific, it reflects good historical scholarship. No shock there at all. It's Brooke Simpson. So yes, you could gain a lot from that, but then the conversation that descends from that sort of goes off into nowhere land for me. I still think ultimately the books is what drive the field, what define the field, but these conversations, they can be useful, and I think that these conversations like the one that we're having now, I hope that they will enrich the kinds of face-to-face conversations that you have at a place like CWI. And so, ultimately, I'm high on our field. I'm an optimist. I truly am. I think that people who whine about the 150th, that it was a tepid response to this commemorative period, they just really have not taken stock of the fact that 2 points. One, the content of the 150th, I think it's really incredibly rich. I think that it has touched bases that they certainly didn't touch during the centennial. And that what I have seen at CWI and elsewhere are people who are engaged and who are thoughtful. And the CWI audience, I think, is evidence of it. When we talked about doing a entire conference on Reconstruction and Emancipation, the poll straw was clear that they wanted to do what? They wanted to do these topics. They wanted to engage these issues of race, of what freedom meant. And so, we're selling people short. We're selling this commemorative period short. We need to stop whining and being excessively self-critical, and we need to just do our work and focus on the content of our work. That's where the engagement is. That's where I think important things can come out of even an online discussion. I think Brooks moved us in that direction with his critique of John Stauffer. But I started to read some of that, and again, at least for me, it seems a bit overwhelming. And I think that there's so many other good things that we could be reading, like the Civil War Monitor and other journals. And I really do mean that. I think that that's probably where, at least for me, that's where my time is best spent.
Well, fair enough, Pete. Well, I won't take up any more of your time today. I do appreciate you coming on. Again, everybody, Civil War Institute in 2015, it's the Civil War in 1865. For those of you who have the opportunity, there are a few weekend slots still available. I can attest to that's the past 2 years. That's what I've done, is the weekend slots. And they're wonderful. They're great.
Can I add one last thing?
Absolutely.
One of the things we're very proud of at the Institute, our Pohanka Fellows Program, we send out more than 20 kids to national parks, Civil War sites, of course. They do God's work out there. And then the final thing is the Civil War Compiler. And it's Civil War Compiler, a blog that we do. It's well worth, I think, people's time. And why I like it, it's original research. And it's original research that our students do. And there's not a lot of the background noise with it. So Civil War Compiler is worth people's time.
Absolutely. And we'll include the link here with the video to the
nice.
compiler.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, we can. But it's truly remarkable to think even that these are college students sometimes when you're reading this. It's the level of research and the sophistication of the writing.
It's incredible.
Really quite something.
And we have about 10 or 15 who come to our conference of students, and they are the easiest kids I've ever had to teach. It's very inspiring to be around them.
All right, Pete, well, always a pleasure to have you on.
Good to see you, man.
And perhaps we can have you on again, obviously, talk about 2016, Reconstruction and the Legacy of the War.
Yes, we'd love to. We'll miss seeing you this summer.
All right, take care.
Take care of yourself. All right, bye-bye.